We get together here on Sunday evenings to meet a new Orthodox Christian. And I just feel like we're so divided up in North America. We worship in all these different jurisdictions. We be right next door to each other, but if we're in different jurisdictions, we wouldn't even know it. And sometimes we're on different calendars, we're worshiping in different languages, but we're all Orthodox, and it's so beautiful to get to know our Orthodox brothers and sisters. And so I'm excited to have this opportunity, and I'm so glad that you've joined us so that we can just, sit down. It's kind of like coffee hour, like sitting down at coffee hour and asking someone, so wait, where did you grow up? Where are you from? And then you find out all these amazing things that you didn't know about them. As my kids would say, you learn all the lore, and it's amazing. But so tonight we are going to be meeting a new person. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, if you're interested, you can always call in with questions if you like. Dial 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. And Matushka Trudy Richter will answer the phone. She will patch you right through, and you'll be able to ask our guest whatever you like. We are live on the Ancient Faith website and also on the AFR app, of course. We're also streaming on Facebook Live. And we're on YouTube. And the fun thing about YouTube is you can actually see our faces over there. So be sure to stop in and actually see us smiling at you. But all right, without any further ado, tonight's guest, I think you're going to really enjoy. I'm looking forward to this. Her name is Clarissa Murray. And so she grew up in South Africa, actually, and until she was 11. And then her family immigrated to the United States. Her professional background is in acting. And so she currently is enjoying the role of homeschool mom to 3 fiercely spirited girls and wife to a man who gets paid to make actors look like superheroes on the big screen. The Murrays live in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, and they have a 90-pound Doberman Pinscher service dog named Blaise. And so I think you're really going to enjoy this. So Clarissa, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you.
It's so good to have you. It's fun. It's nice to meet you. But so tell me, how did your story begin? Were you born in South Africa? Is that everything starts there?
Everything starts there. I was born, I guess my family is South African for at least, 5 generations. So yeah, I was born in Pretoria, not really the place you go on vacation when you think of South Africa, but
Yeah,
raised
what's
there.
Pretoria like? Is because you always think of Johannesburg, right? Or you think of like some
Right.
more scenic vacation-y spots, but and South Africa is a beautiful country, right? But what's
It's
Pretoria
really
like?
beautiful. Um, More how do you, however that word is. Um, so I remember growing up always seeing a mountain in the horizon. So it's beautiful still, lots of jacaranda trees. I don't know if you're familiar, but they have purple flowers.
Oh,
So we always had jacaranda trees in Pretoria. And I remember like honeysuckles, you kind of like suck on the inside.
yes.
Um, so it was beautiful. It was just,
Yeah.
not
It's just
really
kind of a
super
bureaucracy
interesting.
town sort of place, right?
Yeah,
Like it's sort of
yeah,
government business and yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm
right. We lived in
still
a suburb.
yeah. Well, cool. So what
We
did your parents
lived
do?
on it.
Like,
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a bit
go
of a
ahead.
lag with the internet. So it's,
Yeah, it's weird. It's a little bit weird. But
yeah.
so when you're growing up, you were saying you were in a suburb. What did your parents do?
My dad was first I think he worked for an insurance company, and then he was a licensed plumber and handyman. And my mom worked just for the city until their building burned down, which is random, but memorable because I remember, so our house was kind of like on a side of a mountain, not a very large mountain, but we went to the top of the mountain to watch the demolition of the municipal building, which was really cool as a 9-year-old, 10-year-old. So yeah, so she worked for the city. And,
There you go. Well, what made them decide to
yeah,
leave?
I think so. We moved in '99. Their best friends moved to America probably like 92-ish, I think. And apartheid ended in I think '94. I think I was like, yeah, I think that was about the year. And so, which was a good thing. We all agree it was a very good thing. The government changed a lot, and there was a lot of, some civil things that were wonky, and the transition was not as smooth. And so I think, we haven't really talked about it much, but I think it was probably just the uncertainty of South Africa's future and stuff like that, in 99 we visited America in 96. And I remember we went to Disney World. And so it was like the best, most epic vacation. We kind of got a tour of America. We flew to New York City, did the whole Statue of Liberty thing, drove to Chicago where our friends lived, because there's a whole bunch of South Africans in Chicago, and then drove to Atlanta because there's a whole bunch of South Africans in Atlanta, and then drove to Orlando and went to Disney World. So we did that in, I think, 96. And me as a 8-year-old, I was like, I want to move to America.
Right. It's
and my dad
every day here.
Right. It's Disney World, and it's like the movies. Yeah. And I always wanted to work on movies. So I was like, oh, it's totally going to be like the movies and Disney World. And and I think my dad just loved the adventurous idea. And so, 99, we moved.
That's neat. That's really neat. So at 11 years old, what is that move like? Was it all that you hoped it would be? And was it a big cultural shock in any way?
I remember it was very exciting for me and for my dad. I don't remember much of a culture shock, like in a negative kind of way. I think maybe I was young enough for it to be exciting, and because there was snow. I had never seen snow before, so that was in Chicago. That was a big plus. My English, the hard thing, I think the hardest transition for me was now my non-English subjects were in English, like math and geography and stuff like that, where it used to be in Afrikaans. So I had to learn, that transition. But English was always my strongest subject, and I loved movies. So I would watch movies in South Africa all the time, and that was kind of my English education.
That's an advantage, though. It
is.
You learn a lot, yeah.
Right. Wow. My sister was 9, and her English wasn't quite as strong, so she had to go to I think they called it a newcomer center, where all the classes were like ESOL, and she had to so it was a rougher transition for her. Yeah.
It's so interesting you mentioned geography, because I've not thought of that. My mom immigrated, and she was struggling with math and trying to do math in English, but I never thought of geography. That's where every single country has a totally different name in a different language. Yeah. So you're looking at the same map, but all the words are completely different. Plus the map isn't really the same, right? Because I bet in South Africa, when you looked at a map of the world, South Africa was in the center of the world, and then everything was arranged around it, right? But right. We all do that. Yeah. So, our map has us in the middle. We just can't imagine what it would look like if South Africa were the middle. But, I'm glad, though, that it wasn't a terrible culture shock, or that you didn't miss the beautiful mountains too much, because we don't necessarily, we have some beautiful mountains, but maybe not in Chicago. But so as you're growing up in Chicago, were you still thinking about movies?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember starting to take some acting classes there. It's just something I've always but I also kind of had a romanticized version in my head of what it would be like to work on movies, Oh,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, at that age, that's how it is with anything, right? Like a firefighter or anybody, you're not thinking about 12 hours a day sitting in the room waiting for a call,
Right.
So as you're thinking about, I'm curious, what was it about movies in particular that was sort of captivating to you as a young kid? Is it sort of the storytelling? What is it about movies in particular?
As a kid, a lot of it was the action. I can't believe the movies my parents let me watch as a kid, because now having, an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old, I'm like, oh my gosh, I watched all of, Jean-Claude Van Damme's movies before the age of 11, Arnold Schwarzenegger, gosh, Jackie
Yeah.
Chan, all of those. So I really loved the action part of it.
Cool.
And so that eventually led me into like 5 minutes of stunts. And then, my husband's a stuntman, so that
That's so
that worked
cool,
out.
though. So you started out in stunts before you got into acting?
Yes
Just for
and
a
no.
minute, though. Just
So
real quick.
yeah, so the projects I worked on in stunts were bigger projects than my acting projects, which that's kind of fun. So when I started in acting, it was more so as an extra and a stand-in. Which, do you know what a stand-in is? It's
Is that
literally
like for
a person who
blocking
gets
and
paid to
lighting? And
stand. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's like a
They got paid to
stuntman, but
stand.
much less exciting. It's-
More like a mannequin. So I got paid to be the same height as and skin color as a person, and then just stand there while they measure the light. But it was really cool to kind of be in it and the proximity and kind of see how all that goes and works. And I loved, I grew up doing martial arts, and so I loved the idea of doing stunts, and got to work on a couple of projects. And it was cool, as I actually got to work on them with my husband before we were married. Well, some before we were married and one after we were married. But where one was on a show called Vampire Diaries,
oh,
which was
yeah.
a big, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I got to. It was nothing really extraordinary. They had to treat my clothing with flame retardant chemicals because they put us by a bar that was set on fire, and we were, patrons. So we were in the background, but we were stunt performers because it was dangerous. So the bar gets set on fire, and we freak out, and we run out of there, and there's like a couple of stairs, and so in the carfuffle, I fall down the stairs, and then my husband like grabs me and picks me up, and we like run. So that was one of one of them.
That's
And
so
then another
cool.
one I got. It was fun. It was a lot of fun, and another one I got to just ride shotgun in a chase scene, which was fun. And then we got to work together when we got back from our honeymoon on a little short film where he was actually like the fight choreographer, and he choreographed the little fight that I was in, and that was pretty fun. And then I had to scale this fence and jump over, which was terrifying. It was only 8 feet, but it was terrifying. And so I kind of figured out pretty early on, okay, like Stuntwoman is a different caliber than what I wanted to do. Like I was more into like stunt acting or, like action actor,
Yeah.
which, yeah, I
Yeah.
do the
Like you
acting
wanted to
part,
be
so then I
Jean-Claude
get
Van
replaced by
Damme.
the,
Like you wanted to be like the character who was doing not so
right.
much the person.
I want to look really cool and then have somebody else take the pain.
Perfect.
So
Don't we
yeah,
all?
because a lot of stunt, right? For a lot of the stunt women, like their wardrobe doesn't allow for a lot of padding. They're in like dresses and skirts in these movies when there's action, where a lot of the men, they wear pants so they could put padding underneath. So they are tough. They're
So
very
the
tough.
stunt
So
women are getting all beaten up more than the stunt men in general. Oh, that's interesting. And you have to be in good
yeah.
shape, it sounds like, because you're scaling a wall and leaping over it. And like
Yes.
that's a whole other category of activity that not
Yes.
all of us can look, you know, casual and cool
And
while doing. You know?
and do it over and over and over and over again. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, you would get pretty beaten up by
various
the end,
things.
wouldn't you? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Thank God that day nothing went wrong, but I realized, oh, okay, this is terrifying. And then my husband said too, like only one of us like we can't have both of us beaten up in casts. Like,
Right.
he'll
I mean, yeah, somebody's got to take care of the other one when they're all beaten up. If
right.
everybody's like on crutches, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's a good
So
point. It's a very well. We
yeah.
skipped ahead a little bit, but
Okay.
that's really like that was really cool. I like that. But so to get back when you were a kid, then like at what point did you end up going to school for acting, or what did you do? How did you go from just being like a kid growing up in Chicago to someone who was even involved in such things, in stunts and stuff?
So we lived in Chicago until right after. So when we moved to Chicago, um, my dad pretty much did whatever work his friend did, which was custom build golf clubs.
Oh, cool.
And then after 9/11, I guess that company kind of went, downhill. And so he was like, all right, well, I know a whole bunch of South Africans in Atlanta. So off to it. A lot of people here there's the South Africans that do granite, and then there are those in diamonds, and there are those in restaurants. And so he knew the ones in granite, and he's a handyman, so he got into granite down here. So we moved to Atlanta when I was about 13, 14. And
So is that a big thing, South Africans? Because you know what? We have South Africans in granite here in Austin. Like, are
yeah,
there South Africans all over America selling granite that they're bringing in from Africa?
I guess so. Yeah.
Wow, look at that. Who knew? I mean, it's funny, right? Like Greeks tend to own restaurants and everybody's got their
Mm,
thing, but there you go. South
yeah.
African granite. I had no idea. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Some friends of mine are South Africans with a granite place. So
Oh,
there you go.
that's pretty cool.
But
My dad probably knows them.
I mean, that's what I'm
My dad,
thinking, really.
he's the, every time he travels, he sees people at the airport that he's like, oh, I went to high school with you, or, oh, I, knew you in Chicago, or, it's somebody's cousin's brother that he remembers from a conversation because, yeah, he's the type of person that makes best friends in elevators and he
Yep.
gets invited to the golf course. And yeah.
It's such a beautiful thing, isn't it? Like to just be walking around with somebody like that because you're just like, look, we know everyone. I'm introduced to all the people. Like, unless you're maybe not wanting to talk to everyone, I suppose.
He likes to talk. I don't think he minds.
Now, was your family Orthodox growing up?
No,
Because that's a
no, we
super
only,
like Orthodox dad trait, really. Like it's like a lot, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the old Greek dads and stuff, they know everybody and they say hi to everybody. So,
yeah.
yeah, you could
So
fit
his
right in.
transition would be pretty smooth. And, he
It
could look
would.
Greek because he looks ethnically ambiguous.
Oh, perfect.
He was actually, my aunts used to live in Cairo in Egypt. And so when my parents went to visit, it happened to be the same time that El Chapo escaped. And so at
No.
the, at the airport, the guy was looking at my dad's passport and like looking at him, and my dad's super sarcastic. So he was like, do I look like somebody? And the guy's like, yeah. Thankfully, they didn't keep him, but they thought he might have been El Chapo.
There
So,
you go. There you go. He could
yeah,
be anybody. Who knows? Maybe he should be the
right.
stuntman. Like that's very interesting. That's awesome. So what
Uh,
faith were your parents? Were you raised like religiously? Were you guys going to church or what was that like?
so we were raised Dutch Reformed,
Oh, right.
which I guess is like over here, that might be like Presbyterianish or Lutheranish. I don't know. I remember there was an organ. And I remember growing up, I always had to wear dresses or skirts. And which is funny because I hated dresses and skirts. I was such a tomboy. And well, here we are. I'm wearing dresses and skirts to church. But yeah, we in South Africa, so it was, my family was very, very devout, but it's kind of like, I don't know that this is not true for all South Africans, but it's just kind of, you're just Christian. You're just born Afrikaner and you're Christian, and that's just what you do. And you go to church and you work hard, and yeah. So they're very devout, but we don't really talk about theology. It's just kind of like, well, of course you're a Christian, and and so you will date a Christian, and it would be weird if you don't. Um, so that's how I grew up. And then we moved to America, and we're like, non-denominational? You get to wear pants? You can wear your pajamas if you want to, which we did in middle school because it was trending. I remember wearing SpongeBob pajama pants and a t-shirt to church. And,
Wow.
you know,
There you go.
so that was really, we thought it was awesome.
Right.
In Chicago. That was our introduction to America. And went to a big church and got McFlurries afterwards. And
Go.
yeah,
There you
and we
go.
moved to Atlanta and we went to a small church in a little downtown Duluth, which is a suburb. And they were very community oriented, which was really sweet. It was a small church called Calvary Christian Fellowship. And for them, the most important thing was just plugging into the community and serving the community. And that was really cool. And my husband grew up son of a Southern Baptist preacher
Oh, wow.
and went down the stereotypical path of a preacher's kid, like way off the deep end, and eventually made his way back, explored different religions, and was like, well, I can only be Christian. And when I met him, he was going to a charismatic church. And I was like, well, whatever, it's all the same. It's non-denominational. You believe in angels and prophecy. Cool. So
Yeah.
when we met,
And your
that's
parents were
where,
like that too, right? Like your parents were like, well, they weren't caught up on the Dutch Reform specifically.
right.
They were just like,
Like,
as long as he's a Christian, it's good.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I don't even know, I mean, I can't remember if they even went to church with us. They probably might have thought it was a little bit strange because there was some random shofar blowing and dancing with flags, and it was
Energetic.
holy laughter. I don't know if you've ever seen it or
You know
experienced
what?
it,
I
but
have never seen holy laughter. Like I've read that phrase before, but I don't really know what
I've
that is.
seen it. It's something.
Huh. I
Yeah,
might have to look
yeah,
this up on YouTube and figure this
yeah.
out.
I'm
Yeah,
sure there's
there you go. I'm sure
sure
they're
there's
all
some
good.
remastered videos on YouTube of
Yeah, there you go. It's a whole new world now. We can look anything up,
You're
But
welcome. Yeah.
yeah. But so, wow. Okay. So as you're growing up then, so you really, like you were saying that your husband kind of went through that classic, like son of a preacher, like crazy. Did you
Yeah.
find yourself like rebelling against Christianity at any point, or did you just liked it and you just kind of moved to different kinds of churches?
Yeah. I don't ever remember not believing in God. Um, I remember as a kid, and I just recently thought about this, thinking back about my childhood. I remember kind of like having I don't want to say awareness, but let's call it awareness of angels. Like I just kind of felt, I don't know, like I was, like I had a buddy that was my angel. I don't know. I don't know, just like some sort of awareness, I guess. And what's cool is recently I was reading Mother Gavrilia's book, The
Yeah.
Aesthetic of Love, which, have you read it?
Yes, it's very
It's
good. Yeah.
awesome.
I
And
was just
so,
rereading it myself just like 2 weeks ago, and it's so nice.
so I'm thinking about angels a little bit, yeah, in a different way, and just remembering some of my childhood, going, huh, I remember as a kid just being really scared at different times and just asking my angel to help me. And yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's neat. That's really neat. Well, it's a beautiful thing, I think, to have that kind of an awareness, whether it's of angels or I don't know, maybe of saints or of Christ or whatever. But when
hmm
you have that awareness, it is so much easier to believe and to stay, like, I don't know, I have a lot of kids, and some of them will go through these periods where they're like, I can't feel anything that there's a
hmm
God or that there's, and it's like, but what a gift to feel, to be able to feel that angelic presence, which reassures you that that all of this is real, that there is this whole other dimension.
right. And I think that that's kind of kept me, like through my years, because I've had some like dark times where I didn't feel particularly close to God, but I never doubted his existence, and I was never going to abandon Christianity, just the Christianity that I grew up with.
Right. Well, there's different kinds
Yeah.
of Christianity, right? But it's not, I always like to say it was like, it's like restoring something to it. So more than just walking
Yeah.
away from it, it's
Yeah.
like embracing the fullness of it or something. But okay, so as you're growing up then, and you're still thinking about movies and you're going through all this stuff, what were you doing as a teenager? Like, did you go to high school in Atlanta, or I guess in a suburb of Atlanta?
I did. And okay, so it took my family 11 and a half years to get our green card. which is not the norm.
Post 9/11,
we had to start, I guess so. And we had to start from scratch a couple of times where one of my parents' job would sponsor them, and then they would drop us, and the new one would sponsor us and they would drop us. And then we had a really crappy lawyer. And so, yeah, they only move as fast as how much you pay them. So it took a long time. So I went to high school here, but I couldn't legally work until, gosh, I think I was 21. And so I had like summer jobs of getting paid under the table, like through like my high school boyfriend's family that had an ice cream store in Minnesota, or my dad's company. But when I was after high school, and I hated high school, I wanted to take like some time off before even thinking about college, because I thought, okay, surely I'll have my green card by then, because that really affects your ability to go to college. Yeah. Like I wasn't international enough to get like some sort of perks of being an international, but I wasn't American yet or a resident alien yet. So I couldn't get any kind of scholarships here. So it wasn't until I was about 21 where I applied for like a local college, Georgia State over here. And my mom started paying on the credit card. And after a semester, I was like, I can't have you like really go into debt just for this. Like, I know I want to act, so how about I just find acting classes? And I found a local acting studio that was awesome. And so after a semester of Georgia State and then a summer semester of like a local college, I just kind of abandoned that path and just put all my ducks into acting class. So yeah,
well,
here I am.
It makes sense though, because that's a lot of money at credit card interest rates. It's
right
to justify, right?
And that was just for core classes. That wasn't even for what I wanted to study. Yeah. So it worked out, going to acting classes.
That's very good. Well, so you're still trained in acting. It's just you didn't train in the other stuff around it that would have, that would have fulfilled the full degree requirement. But it's still you're getting all the training you need for what you want to do. It's kind of like vocational training, just for acting.
Yeah.
But well, that's cool. Okay. Well, so we are going to take a very short break. Then we're going to come back, and I want to hear all about how you met your husband and how all of this amazing life of yours transpired. So we'll be right back.
Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bieletich-Davis will be back in a moment. Give Elisa and her guest a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
A walk through Acts provides a complete overview of the Acts of the Apostles in 26 compelling lessons with additional activities, coloring pages, and memory verses for children ages 5 to 12. Each lesson is designed as a conversational guide for building spiritual interactions within the context of the Holy Scripture and fits into the framework of an hour-long session. The extra activities, split into age groups of 5 to 8-year-olds and 9 to 12-year-olds, allow the students to dive more deeply into the subject matter, but can also be distributed as take-home materials. The lessons are designed for both inexperienced and veteran teachers. While Orthodox children have likely heard the gospel stories repeatedly in liturgy and in church school, the follow-up stories related in the book of Acts are often overlooked. This curriculum addresses this deficit with a focused look at this sequel to the Gospels. A walk through Acts is written from an Orthodox Christian perspective with supporting notes from the Church Fathers. It is accompanied by iconographic illustrations that help inform each of the 26 lessons and activities. This work aspires to be a springboard into a lifelong adventure of scriptural study. Available at store.ancientfaith.com. Again, that is store.ancientfaith.com.
We're back with Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bieletich-Davis. Do you have a question for Elisa and today's guest? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Elisa.
And welcome back to Everyday Orthodox. I'm here tonight with Clarissa Murray. And so we're talking about how, she came over from South Africa at 11 and how it took a very long time to get green cards. And so I guess, and I do think, after 9/11, they say that they did tighten all of that stuff up, but that's still a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
That's,
really long.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very long. Did your parents ever, you think, consider just giving up on it and going somewhere else? Or do you think that they were like, for sure, it's got to be the United States, so we're just going to find a way?
That's a good question. I think they were pretty set on here. I think, it took so much blood, sweat, and tears to do the thing that they were not going to throw in the towel. But also there was so much uncertainty because the lawyer always made it sound like, within the next year, so towards the end there, we're like, oh my gosh, when? Like, it's been within the next year for a long time.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure for them, as you became an adult, and it wasn't just, the two of us are toughing this out and taking care of the kids, and it's like, oh no, now we're sending them out into the world, and they can't legally work either, and like, what do we, that I'm sure that was putting extra pressure on them. So it's good that it finally fell into place. But
yeah.
So where were you living then when you were taking acting classes and trying to get your start?
Here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So the owner of the studio, my acting coach, was actually the on-set acting coach for like the Vampire Diaries, and she was an on-set coach for multiple TV shows and movies and stuff. So it was really cool to attend her acting classes and get that, feedback, because it wasn't just theater, it was, on-camera experience, which that's really what I had in mind. But I love being on stage. Like,
so
there's nothing like that live feedback,
Well, that's true. That's true. But I guess when you're on camera, you've got like maybe the director and a few people, but it's not a crowd of people standing up and applauding, right? That's probably not that.
Right. Unless you're doing the stunt.
Yeah.
And it goes well, then they applaud.
And it goes well.
But otherwise it's often like the awkward silence after your scene of like, all right, next up. And it's, like all there's the grips, there's the electrics, there's the hair and makeup, and then, background or no background. And so, it's the satisfaction comes once it's been edited, where on stage,
delayed.
It's,
that's
immediate
delayed
feedback.
Gratification right there, right? Because it's like, it could be a while before it's seen by anyone. And then they come to.
And then there's also the turmoil of like, am I going to like the edit? Which take are they going to use? Are they going to use it? Did it get cut?
Yikes. So are there a lot of shows filmed in Atlanta?
Oh, yeah. It was number one or number two in the world for a while, because of the tax credit here, the tax incentives. Yeah. Oh. Now, since the strikes last year, all that is changing. So there's been a bit of a lull recently. I think the industry is kind of reshaping and stuff like that. But
and that makes sense.
There's a lot happening in Georgia.
That's so cool. That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. But because you always hear about things being filmed in Vancouver, and you hear about LA, obviously, or New York. But that's really interesting that there's a lot of TV down in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So what was your first job in acting?
As an actor? So not a stand-in or an extra.
Because I guess that doesn't count as, stand-in does not really count as acting, right? Because you're just standing there and you're like, maybe angling yourself right to catch the light or something.
Right.
But it's like almost lower level modeling or something. But it's still cool, right? Because you're still in it and you're seeing it. But
yes, it's a great experience and a way to get there. Yeah.
What was it like being an extra?
Oh. So the first time I was an extra, to answer your previous question, my first job actually was right when I graduated high school. I worked on an independent film called Grilling Bobby Hicks, and it was a comedy.
Great title.
And that was an awesome experience. I got paid, for somebody who just, graduated high school. It was a lot of money. It was a lot of fun.
Well, that's neat.
Yeah. So, and that was a couple of months of filming.
Oh, wow. So that's kind of a
So
big project. That's neat. That's really
yeah, it
cool.
was a feature film, and yeah, I was definitely the least experienced of everybody there, and didn't know it. I was like so naive, and you know, but I had a great time, and I got paid, enough money, and I took myself to South Africa by myself, as an 18-year-old for, a month, and got to
That's
visit
neat.
family. I went, so my grandma at the time, she was still alive, and she got remarried in her, 80s, her 80s. So I got to go to her wedding.
Oh, that's so neat. But what a great thing, right? Like at 18
Yeah,
to be like, yeah, I earned the money and paid my way. I came to South
yeah,
Africa to see all of you. Yeah, that's really
it
cool.
was pretty
That's very
cool.
neat.
And it was just an independent film, but it was a lot of fun, a great experience. So
That is really neat.
yeah.
And so then after that, you're working more like as extras and just kind of like fitting in around television shows. And
Yeah.
what is it like to be an extra on a TV show?
Depending on the show, it can be a hit or miss. It's a whole lot of waiting. My mom loves being an extra because she gets to like, you know, uh, do some busy work and get free food, like really good food, and just kind of watch everything happen, and just get paid to chat with her friend, and do crossword puzzles and whatever, and just hang out.
It doesn't sound bad,
So
right? It really doesn't sound
it's
bad at
it's
all.
not it can be very uncomfortable depending on the season. So I've been an extra where it was like the dead of summer, and you're outside in the heat, and it's long
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
And also I've done it when it's very, very cold, and I had to wear a dress and heels, and
Yeah.
you gotta,
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes
yeah,
you're really dressed for the wrong season, I think. And that is really, that can be
right.
difficult. Yeah.
And
Or at least
so without the
unpleasant enough to
glamorous
take the
part,
fun out of it. you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And in between, the actors, they have their people, and they go to warming, they have all like warm gear to help them through it, and the extras are like suffering in the tent, and yeah. So
That's
it's
awful.
not super glamorous depending on,
There
but
you
it can
go.
be a very cool experience. So
That's neat. That's really neat. So then, so as you're going along, at what point did you meet your husband?
I met him on a TV show when I was a stand-in, and he was a grip, which, do you know what a grip is? They work
Sort
with
of.
like they shape the light. So the
Okay.
electrics plug in the lights and do, a lot of that stuff. And the grips kind of, they have like these bounce boards and flags to
Yeah.
paint, to yeah, shape the lights, and then also to make way for whatever the director needs to shoot on the day. So sometimes it's oh no, there's a wall. We need the camera to come through the wall. Grips, make it work,
Good
put a hole in
luck
there, yeah, they're awesome. So he went to film school, and he always wanted to do stunts and then eventually direct. And so after film school, he just wanted to get on set and meet the right people. So he started as a PA and then a grip. And then it was while he was a grip that I met him. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. And so,
Yeah.
and
We started
were you
chatting.
just working on the same project and just standing around talking to each other?
standing in the light.
Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently he had recognized me because I have a tattoo on my shoulder, and we had worked on 2 projects prior to it. And, it was a day where I didn't have much to do, and we were both off camera, and he offered me a chair, and we just started chatting, and was like, oh, you want to do stunts? I want to do stunts. You do Muay Thai? I do Muay Thai. You like to shoot guns? And so,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
our
cool.
first time hanging out, we went to go shoot guns, and we went to church, and then we went to dinner. And I didn't think it was a date because I didn't want to date anybody. And
Right.
he was so planning for it to be a date. So
How long did it take him to decide or to convince you that you wanted to date this guy?
it was probably about a month of dating. I mean, like going on dates that I didn't really think are dates because I just wanted to hang out. And he was like, all right, so like, what do I call you? You know, can I call you my girlfriend? I was like, oh, I really don't want to date anybody, but I really don't want anybody else to date you. So he's sure. It was one of those, because I mean, he was the most interesting person I had ever met. And I knew like if I was going to let him go, he was going to get snatched up pretty quick. So I had to lock it down.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Why didn't you want to date anyone? Like, did you just feel it was the wrong time in your life, or what was that?
Yeah, well, I had a high school boyfriend that I was with for like 3 years, and then, and kind of moved with him and his family to Minnesota because they had an ice cream store and it was the only way I could work. I mean, that's not why, but anyway.
Right.
And then after that breakup, I didn't date anybody for a while, and I dated somebody for a little bit and then broke up. I was like, you know what? This is stupid. I'm just going to focus on acting. Forget all of you.
Right.
And
well, but I mean, that's the way to do it in a sense, right? Is to not be caught up in all of that and going through all of that. And then you just meet the right person and you go, well, you're the right person. So I guess this isn't wasting my time at all. This is just moving forward. So there you go. That's lovely.
Yeah.
I love that. So then in time, did he end up directing, or did he end up getting more focused on stunts and starting to really get into
Yeah, he got more into stunts. He pretty soon after, like, he started getting into stunts and is still doing it. So now his, the bread and butter is in the wire work. So he works on wire teams. So do you watch any superhero movies?
Yeah.
So there's, they're flying and explosions and stuff.
Right.
So they have a wire team that will make them look like superheroes. And that's what he does. He just finished Captain America a couple of months ago. And before that was Thunderbolts, which is a Marvel movie where the villains kind of are the heroes. And so he just gets to make them look like they're flying. Or
oh, that's so neat.
And then sometimes he's on camera too. So he loves performing too. So they'll kind of use the team where they're needed. So
that's neat. So what sorts of scenes would we see him in if we were watching a movie where he was on camera? Is he like sort of like an extra, but like a superhero extra, or what would he be?
Yeah, typically he's like, bad guy number 4 that repels from the helicopter that gets killed, or he usually gets killed.
So,
he's been killed a few times.
So. Yeah. There are all of these characters who, if you think about it, do amazing things and then die, right? They're like scaling the train on the cliff and then it all goes south. And that makes sense. That's pretty cool. So,
he did have it was fun is in they filmed The Walking Dead here, and he was an iconic zombie, which was kind of funny. There's like a action figure made out of it, but we didn't get anything because it was like a zombie. It wasn't like one of the actors, but we're like, oh, look at that. That's kind of, there you are.
I mean, that's like every little kid's dream, right? Like there's an action figure.
Except it would haunt your kids' dreams. Because it was a horrific zombie.
It's terrible.
But
yeah. See, our parents would have let us watch that.
That's true.
We're not going to let our 8-year-olds watch that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, only if Arnold was a zombie, though. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, but he would have been if Walking Dead were back then. So there you
go. Totally.
But so tell me, so the two of you on your first date went to church. So you were both pretty serious about your faith. Did you guys continue like going to church together, and how did all of that evolve? How did you guys end up Orthodox?
Oh man. Okay. So how much time do we have? All right. So started off at the charismatic church, and I was like, cool, it's all the same. That's great. I like angels. And when I was pregnant with our first child, it was kind of where we started our church hopping, because they were very focused on everybody kind of being a prophet and speaking in tongues and so on. And we're like, like the pastor was preaching from his book with, supported by some scripture. And it just didn't sit right. So when we were pregnant with our first, we started the process. And what's funny is our doula that we did birthing classes through. She was married to an Anglican priest, and we visited their church one time, and I was like, man, I could get behind this. Like, there's incense, people here have tattoos and dress like us. Like, I could get behind it. And he was like, nah, I mean, yes, but it's not. We had a list. We had a really long list of what we want in a church, and it was pretty absurd, but we had a list, and it didn't meet the list, but it was close.
But I mean, that's our culture, right? Like, is to be, and it's a weird thing because it's on your shoulders to pick the right church. So it's very responsible actually to make a list of like things that one would look for in a good church. But then once, if you become Orthodox or probably Catholic or even Anglican, you probably look at that and go, well, who the hell are you to make the list? Like, where'd you get the list? Did the church fathers write that list? Like, where'd you get that? But from that perspective of coming from like non-denominational, charismatic, from all of these different, that's the only responsible thing you can figure out what to do, because there is no like reliable authority to make you a list. It's a weird
right.
So
it is a weird thing.
Like, what kind of stuff would be on the list? Oh my gosh, like, it had to be Bible based. Oh, right.
But, well, how did you know? It had to be Bible based. We wanted, now these were cool. We wanted to have a church that took communion every Sunday, and that's which we didn't find. Or we'd and then a really good children's program because our kids need to be somewhere, during church. Within 10 minutes of our home, which, that was not a bad one.
It's a good idea if you can find it, right? That's kind of like a must-have more than a must-have.
Oh my gosh. You know what? Just that one, like if it wasn't for that one, we probably would have been Anglican, like right from the get-go. But and my very analytical and reads more person I know, like deep in depth, theology. So we could kind of debate the pastor wherever we went, and so also I was like, do we really want a pastor that debate? And So we the Church of Acts. Like, we just got to go back to the beginning, because there's so much, we work in an industry where everything's fabricated. You have all these counterfeit things, fake things to make the scene work and to make it appear real. And so when we're seeing that in church, it's so off-putting when we see the smoke machine and the sound machine and all these things to engineer your feelings. It was kind of yucky.
Absolutely.
So we were like, what was it like? It was probably a house church, right? And so we went to different house churches, and I was like, yeah, I could totally plug in here. And Matt's like, no. I'm like, oh, okay, what about this one? And he's like, no. So most places we went, I was like, oh, my friends are here, I could totally be here. And he'd be like, no. They predestination. I'm like, but does it matter? Or I would really like the music.
I was fine.
Right. And so
I think that's so common though to have, and maybe it's a good thing to have that balance where one of you is like, I can make this work, no problem. And the other one's like, no, we got to be more picky. Like that.
Yeah. I mean, I thank God, because who knows what I would have ended up as. But so, I mean, we really, we went to a Messianic Jewish temple, which that was a really cool experience. So I was super pregnant. It was like, I don't know, probably June or May in Atlanta, and not a whole lot of air conditioning, small space. They stand the whole time, which we'd never experienced. And there's this sweet elderly lady in front of me who looks like she's about 90, and she's standing the whole time. So I was like, I cannot sit. I'm very pregnant and very hot, but I can't sit because this lady in front of me is standing the whole service. But it was my first time seeing, they did a procession. I had never seen a procession with, I guess, the Torah. And people were kissing it and bowing. And I was like, what is this? They like obviously love and respect and revere the scriptures. I had never seen that before in my life. And I think that really stuck with me, even though we still had many years of church hopping. And then, yeah, years down the road, we started going back in time. So we settled at a Presbyterian church for a little while because the pastor was Irish and he was super cool and actually drank, whiskey. So Matt was like, okay, I could deal, and they would go to a sports bar and talk theology. But eventually we started having conversations with dear friends. They're friends of ours. The guy had a tattoo shop and the wife had a hair salon. We always looked at them as like the super cool couple. And they had a really super cool car, but they didn't try to be cool. They were just cool. And they had 3 kids and they were all just a beautiful family who didn't care about being cool. They were just cool. And we started having conversations and they brought up some Orthodox theology. And it was just, when we heard it, it's like something in my soul was like, this is right. Like, this is the thing that we're looking for, but it's the opposite of everything we grew up with. Like, but this seems like it's resonating. So my husband Googled, okay, nearest Orthodox church. And it was a Greek parish at the metropolis, 10 minutes within our house, right. So it was like right in the driving distance.
Oh, yeah.
And he went, it happened to be, so we're looking for, okay, what time's the service? And the sign's in Greek, and then it says orthros and liturgy. We're like, what's the orthros? What's
English?
Service? What's a liturgy? Like, I don't know. And so I told him, you go, just report back, because, I had 2 toddlers. I'm not going to take them, and I don't, might all be in Greek. So he went and he came back and he was like, I didn't understand a word that was going on, but that was the holiest place I've ever been. And I'm pretty sure that's going to be it. And so for him to say that, I was like, oh, well, I better try it, because every single place was nope, nope, but this, nope. So for him to say that, I think our first time going was like Holy Wednesday, which is an absurd time to visit an Orthodox church for the very first time ever with small children. And it was very similar, because so we're having conversations with our friends we're hearing these Orthodox things going like, we really think this is it. This looks very different than what we grew up with. Right. Okay, let's learn about it. So we set up a meeting with the priest, and my husband had his list of questions. And he came back and he didn't ask a single question because he already felt schooled, just because of all the things he didn't even know that he didn't know. So it was a really, really clumsy stumbling into the Orthodox faith by the grace of God.
I feel like it always is, that there's always, but it's sort of it's a neat thought that he had all of these questions, because that's good, but that he gets there and he sort of drops them, because I do think that there's a way that the only real way in eventually is that eventually you have to sort of just be humble and sort of, bow your head and be like, okay, you tell me what church is. Like, you tell me what all of this is.
Because obviously we don't know. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, what was funny, so all the churches that we tried, the kids were usually like, oh, that's the church of the goldfish, because that's the snack they would get, or, oh, it's the church of the animal crackers, the church of the donuts. And when we visited Annunciation, they're like, oh, it's the church with the angels. So we were like, what? And it took us a minute to realize, well, there's angels carved into the doors of the church. And then there's also icons with angels. And so we're like, okay, that's quite significant that you refer to it as the church with the angels.
It is, though. I mean, even if it is the artwork and it's not that they sensed angels or something, it's still such a good point, right? Because they're reacting to these surroundings that are meant to call us to an awareness of angels and saints and everybody else. And, so many of our American churches just aren't set up that way. And it's not, there is no visual art to call you to anything, right? Like you're just sort of in this room. And as you said, sometimes there's lighting and there's smoke or something else, but, there's not that same thing. That's really neat. I think that's beautiful. So how old were your kids when you converted?
So we only had 2 at the time, and I think they were 1.5 and 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's probably easier with little ones than teenagers. So your timing was probably pretty good.
I guess it's a different kind of easier. Physically, it was a circus. It's still a circus,
True.
but I mean, it was, and Father Paul advised us to sit in the front row, because then the kids get to see what's happening. They don't see back of heads, which is great, except where we don't know when to sit, when to stand, what's going on. I'm wrangling. I'm like trying to read the English because it's Greek and English, which the bits and pieces that I read, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the most beautiful. Who wrote this? This is, I mean, it's so incredibly beautiful. I still think that, but it was a bit of a struggle. So we're in the front row at the very Greek church where everybody dresses to the nines, and I'm in like my like harem pants from Bali, and or we used to play spot the t-shirt and spot the tattoos to kind of see like where are people, we were super judgy going in, and now it's home. Now it's like we can't imagine anything else.
And isn't it funny, because you would think it would be the other people who would be judgy, right? Because you're like, well, I'm coming in a t-shirt and tattoos, and they're all super fancy. And it's not that they're not welcoming you. It's that you're like, oh, you guys are so uptight, and you're so,
right?
So uncool over here. But it's a beautiful thing to be able to join anyway, right? Like it's the humility again, right? To say like, okay, they're uncool, and we're going to do it anyway. We're going for it. But putting the kids in the front row is a great idea. But the only problem is that the people, like, there are a lot of people who are watching the people in the front row to find out when to sit up or get up and sit down.
They were so out
no
of
one
luck.
you can watch, and it's just like, well, this is
yeah. Well, what's so funny? So back to Mother Gavrilia, I read in her book, she would say, always sit on the same side of the church for the angels. And I was like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Well, thinking back, our God family ended up being the people who were right behind us. And I don't know, we always sat in the same spot, and there we go.
I mean, I don't know, there are just people who sit on the left and people who sit on the right, and it's weird when they switch, it
really is.
That's how it is. And I like that about it. Somebody will say, oh, who's that? And I'll say, oh, she's third row back on the right, usually about 2 or 3 in. And they're like, oh, yeah, I know her. It's kind of lovely. Well, that's great. Well, it's so nice to get to know you, Clarissa. This is so cool. And just, I'm so glad that you guys found the church, and that it all just clicked in so beautifully for you. But thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me. Maybe next time you can talk to my husband and hear the more theological explanation.
Oh, there you go. He'll give me the full. He'll give me the full story. We'll bring
exact exposition. Yeah.
See, that's not what you expect from a stuntman, but we'll find out. We'll have to get to know him too.
Right.
But, no, that's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you to our listeners for joining us. And come on back next week. We'll meet another everyday Orthodox Christian. Good night.